Hello, my name's Ian Seeger from Pilot Career News. On the 6th and 7th of November, we held our very first virtual edition of Pilot Careers Live. We streamed over 30 different seminars with 60 speakers. There were 2 days packed full of great information. Of course, we recorded everything, and you're about to watch one of the videos from the event. Before you do, I just want to thank our sponsors, Bose, Alsim, Entro, and of course Poolies. Without them and without the exhibitors, it wouldn't be possible. The exhibitor pages are still live, so feel free to head on over there, go to www.pilotcareerslive.com and click through to the exhibitors. There's loads of information, loads of downloads, all sorts of great stuff there for you. Anyway, enjoy the video, and if you find it useful, really appreciate it if you click subscribe on our YouTube channel. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello and welcome to this next session on CV and cover letter writing. Fantastically useful session, I hope, for you. And clearly, once you've done all the training, you've been through all those loopholes. Once you've jumped through all those hoops, as it were, you need a job. And clearly, this is a critical part in getting a job. So I'd like to. Before we go over to Tiina, just a quick piece of housekeeping. There's a whole bunch of questions coming up that could be really, really easily answered by the individual exhibitors. So if you've got a simple question or even a complicated question, feel free to jump over there, engage with the exhibitors one-to-one on the live chat, or even set up a Zoom call with them. No problem at all. You can get your questions answered. If you're looking for more than one opinion, then you can get that opinion through a bunch of them. Ask the same question as many times of as many people as you like. And finally, just before we go over to Tiina, one more thing, and that's to say thank you to our sponsors Bose, Poolies, Alsim and Entro. And if you're shopping at Poolies and use the code PCO, you get 5% off, which can't be bad. So thank you very much for that. Let's get on with it. Tiina, how are you doing?
Hi, great, thank you. Thanks very much for having me again today to talk about cover letters and CV writing. So
absolute pleasure. Now, for those people who haven't managed to tune into the whole thing all the time, I wonder if you could just kick off by introducing yourself and giving a bit of background, and then go straight into your presentation. I know you've got slides. And
yeah, I do. Yeah, so I'll take you through some of the kind of best practice in terms of CVs and cover letters through slides. It'll just be easier rather than me warbling on for half an hour. So my name's Tiina Conacher. I'm a chartered psychologist. I've been working in pilot selection and assessment for a number of years, all the way across kind of ab initio pilots, as well as then experienced people coming into the airline. So I've worked in the airline side of things, as well as for doing some work for flight schools. So I've seen lots of CVs along the way, and seen what really hits the mark with employers often.
Excellent, fantastic. So let's with teachers, how do we get that job? Well, not me, but how do people give themselves the best chance of getting that job? How do they get noticed?
Well, so what I would say is that that is definitely down to the individual. So often, as long as you follow kind of best practice, make it look the part, then actually you have nothing to worry about. It's often the CVs that are really bad that stick to mind. So really, if you kind of just keep simple best practice in mind when writing them, and think about the person who's reading it as well, and what they need to know about you, then you're probably going to be in a relatively good place to start off with. But I will give you more information through my slides. So I'm just going to share my screen, hopefully, with you.
Okie dokie.
Right, can you see that okay?
Absolutely.
Great. Right, so I've done introductions already, so no need to kind of talk about me too much. So really what we're going to be talking about today is just giving you general advice on CVs and cover letters and how to construct them. I'm going to talk a little bit about CVs for different purposes, because especially in my role as a resilient pilot mentor at the minute, what we're seeing a lot of is people applying for both flying roles as well as for roles outside of aviation. So it's a really good idea to have different CVs for different approaches. We'll talk a little bit about how you can structure your CV for flying training. So if you are applying to the flying schools, and if they're asking you to submit a CV, then it just gives you an idea in terms of the information that you might want to put down for those. Talk a little bit about your CVs for your first airline job and how to put yourself across, as in when those opportunities open up again. Some troubleshooting, so common mistakes people make. We'll talk about cover letters quickly, and then I'll just give you a couple of useful resources as well to have a look at. So in terms of CV structure, I mean, there is so many ways in which to skin this cat. So there is no kind of silver bullet to this. You can choose whichever kind of format you want, but these are in essence the steps that people should be looking at in taking is, have your name and contact details at the top, have a short personal statement, which I'll talk a little bit more about in terms of how you can structure that. You then go on to your career history, so in chronological order, so the most recent first, your education, again, your most recent first, then other qualifications, skills and interests, and then adding references on request at the end. So there is no requirement, especially in the UK, to stipulate who your references are at this point when you're applying, and actually you need to think about GDPR and whether you should be giving out references, especially personal references, details out at the CV stage. Often employers ask for this later on, so literally putting down references on request is sufficient. Other things to think about when you are pulling together your CV is to really concentrate on the reader. And when I say that, think about the person you are applying to, think about the company, think about the job. So, read through that job description really carefully so that you understand what they are looking for and try and mirror the different parts of your CV to match that. Often a common mistake that people make is that they put down absolutely everything about their experience, and that's often not required. What you should be doing is tailoring the story that you're telling to that employer about you and your skill sets and making sure that it matches as closely as possible to what they're looking for. So especially right now, the market is really competitive, in and outside of aviation. And what we're seeing is that, if you aren't in 80% match for that role, then actually you're probably not going to get even selected for an interview. So spending time on your CV is a really good thing to be doing right now, irrespective of the role that you go for, and really thinking about what that employer wants from you. And if you don't have the required skills and qualities now, then it's unlikely that they will consider you, because there are so many qualified candidates out there right now looking for work. Often people also send out lots of the same CV out. So like I hear stories of people saying, well, I've sent out 400 CVs in the last week and I've not heard back. That's probably not a good approach, because you haven't been tailoring your CV to the employer. Things people have done when I've worked for an airline is, they've sent in a cover letter or a CV and they've addressed it to the wrong airline. And that straight away puts people off from even considering you, because you haven't paid any attention to the detail or actually thought about, yourself or how you're putting yourself across. So really spending a little bit of time on it is really important. So just a quick snapshot of some different types of CVs, and really the format you choose is completely up to you. There's lots of free CV samples out there that you can utilize, and if you just think about the structure that I just described, as long as it has those bits in it, then actually that's going to stand you in good stead in terms of putting the right information forward. We often get asked about pictures. So in the UK and Ireland, it's quite uncommon that you put a picture into a CV. In other countries, you do. So think about the type of picture you put in. And make sure it's professional and looks the part. Nothing too big. So you can see on these couple of CVs that I'm just flashing up there, it's a kind of a small passport size photo that you've included in there. The personal statements, it's something that people really struggle with, but there is a really easy way to formulate these. So you should always, in the personal statement, describe who you are, what your relevant strengths or skills are, and then what you're looking for. So I've just included a couple of examples of personal statements here for you to have a look at. We've got a pilot example, and this is literally taken from a real CV, and it's the same person. So it just shows you how that person's tailored it to a pilot role and then a non-flying example. So a confident, highly competent, safety-orientated pilot seeking first officer opportunities to develop my career and experience in new operating environments. So he's just described there who he is and what he's looking for. He then goes on to describe his strengths. Some of my key strengths include my engineering background, complex problem-solving abilities, adaptable and effective communication skills, and the ability to remain calm when under pressure. So it just shows you a good illustration of how this person's attacked personal statements. They're not always present in pilot CVs, so you don't necessarily need to include it, but it is a really nice snapshot for some employers to get a flavour of what you are like as a candidate from the offset. They say that people lose interest within 30 seconds of reading your CV. It's very quick judgments that are often made, rightly or wrongly. So actually spending a little bit of time on a punchy personal statement is a good idea. So in terms of pilot CVs, so what's the difference? So often what needs to be included, and some people don't, is a snapshot of your flying credentials. So things like your license type, your type rating, any other endorsements, and your flying hours should be mentioned. And that's really there, again, just to show to the recruiter that you've got the right experience to be considered. So refer back to the job description and have a look at what they're asking for and make sure that your CV mirrors that. So that's often at the top. It's often in a summary table that people include it, but it's just a really good punchy way to start to show that, you know, from a practical perspective, you know, you meet the criteria that they are looking for. Pilot CVs are often a little bit shorter, so we tend to see kind of one-page CVs for pilots rather than them being 2 pages like they are often in the external world. And that's probably down to sometimes people's experience, but also the nature of the role that is being applied to, which is one, you know, it's a volume role. So recruiters are often looking for specific information about you to then process you on to the next stage, rather than it being one person for one role. But again, airlines differ, operators differ. So actually you need to be thinking about the operators' requirements and what they are looking from you, because someone from a business jet world might be much more interested in different things than someone, you know, who's looking to hire a line pilot for an airline. Personal statement, as I mentioned, optional, but again, think about the company you're applying to and whether it adds to the story you're trying to tell to the company. So flying training wise, I would approach a CV for flying training much more along the lines of a graduate CV. So often when you are applying for flying training, you don't have that much work experience yet. So it's absolutely fine to lead with your education, because that might be actually the thing that they are looking for from you. So think about the structure of your CV and show them the evidence that they want to see from you. So from a flying training perspective, actually, well, what have you done in school might be much more valuable than, you know, a part-time job that you've had whilst you've been studying. Obviously, if you've already got work experience, then absolutely lead with this, because that's going to be potentially very relevant to them. So again, just think about the reader. You could also consider including things like your hobbies and any flying you've done in your CV. Again, I would always encourage people to get a bit of flying experience before they apply to flying training. So have a think about whether, you know, your current skill set kind of interlinks with what the flying schools are looking for, and then try bring that out through the various bits in your CV. And then ensure you've demonstrated all the skills and criteria that have met that they're asking for. Sometimes you don't need to put everything into a CV. It could be that there's an application form that they ask you to fill in, and some pieces you might be putting into a cover letter. So don't try to kind of cram absolutely everything into your CV, because there might be other opportunities for you to demonstrate that experience that is required for the role you're applying for, or the school you're applying for. So in terms of airline roles, then, so obviously it's quite a challenging environment, needless to say, out there at the minute. So those first airline jobs are few and far between, but they will hopefully come back relatively soon. So when you are applying for airline roles, what we often look for is your training achievements. So lead with that. So almost like in the pilot CV, put forward, how well you've done in your training, your current flying hours, reflect back to them what they need to know about you as a cadet pilot. First time passes are great to see, and things like that. So just make sure that you are bringing that evidence out as much as possible. So show you've done your research. So play back your experience in their language. So really get to know the airline that you're applying for, and make sure that you are showing lots of motivation to work for them through the language you use, the different experiences that you might have had. And don't forget about previous experience, so previous work experience, because this might be something that really sets you apart. So as an example, I reviewed someone's CV very recently, and he summarised his flying training beautifully at the start, and then almost kind of hid in his CV the fact that he'd been in the military for several years and had all this amazing experience, but it wasn't highlighted strongly enough in his CV. And I know for a fact that actually that experience would be something that a lot of employers would be really keen to see, because he would have learned all sorts of skills through his training and through his service, but that was almost hidden in the CV. So shout from the rooftops in terms of what you've done, and really think about the things that might be every day to you might be the things that really are important to the employer, because at the end of the day it is about creating a personal connection. It's about showing interest. It's about showing that you are not just a one in a million sometimes. So just kind of final thoughts, housekeeping really. So don't make it too long, so maximum 2 pages. Always have more than one CV to start off from. So have that flying CV, have that non-flying CV ready to go, and then tailor it every time. It's a painful process, but it really pays off in the long run. Think about details in your CV. So is your email address appropriate? So my favorite is hotmail@hotmail.com is not a good CV email address. So just use your first name and your surname, and open up a generic email inbox, and use something like that, rather than using your silly one that you send your friends emails from. Check your spelling and grammar, really important, often gets completely overlooked and then creates quite an unprofessional view of you. Make sure that you formatted the document. So does it look the part? So are all your different sections in the same font size? Are you following a structure throughout the CV? Really important. Picture, we mentioned, depends on the country and the airline that you are applying to. So take some advice on that and do a little bit of Googling, depending on where in the world you are applying to. And this applies not just to cadets, but also to airline pilots all over. And then avoid kind of cheesy one-liners or lying, just be your best self. So quite often we've seen I play golf badly in pilot CVs, and as amusing as that is, often you're just wasting their time as well as your own, putting stuff like that in. So just leave it out. And then I just wanted to mention LinkedIn and other social media channels. So irrespective of if you put your photo in or not, make sure that your LinkedIn profile is reflective of what is in your CV. So, what kind of picture do you have on LinkedIn? There's a picture of me drinking wine there, some, slightly inappropriate pilot style pictures, sticking your head out of a cockpit window whilst flying at God knows what altitude is probably not a good idea to be advertising to employers. The ones in the middle are probably the ones that you want to be emulating yourself forward. Maybe not as cheesy and as American as that, but anyway, it's really important to think about how your social media presence comes across as well, and make sure that your LinkedIn profile matches what's on your CV. And get connecting, because I think in the modern world, it's really important to establish those connections. And it's often, roles come up that won't be advertised officially, and it's often through those connections. So make sure that you're really active on LinkedIn to seize the opportunities as and when they come up. So there are a lot of hidden jobs out there. And then moving on to cover letter structures. So in very, very simple steps. So always follow letter writing best practice. So again, use Google, have a look. How is a formal letter written? Where should your address be? Where should their address be? And how should you address people? So often you should start off with dear sir, madam. Don't assume that the recruiters are male. So, dear sirs might not be the best way to start unless you know actually that the person recruiting is male. And then ending it really formally with yours sincerely or yours faithfully. And in terms of the actual structure, what you should be putting across is why you're getting in touch, first of all, with them. So state the role in the company you're applying for. Make sure that you change this every time. So going back to the example of someone basically using the same cover letter and then forgetting to change the name of the company in there isn't going to set you in the right stead, and certainly doesn't speak of your ability to watch out for details. So really pay some attention to that. Then you should move on to explaining why you're applying for the role. So explain your rationale, and also let them know why you would be a great candidate for the role. So don't expect that they would have got all that information from the CV. It's also really important to talk about it in the cover letter. Also, the cover letter is the perfect place to talk about things like, so right now, a lot of people have been made redundant because of COVID, and it's often a good place to address that and positively frame that message that although, you have come across this unfortunate situation where you're no longer employed, but you are now open and available for opportunities at very short notice. So there's a way of explaining it. The cover letter is a really good place to do that. Then explain what you could do for the company. So show you understand them and that you're motivated to work for them. So do some research, show that you know what aircraft they fly, show something perhaps about their route structures, reflect back onto them the things that they would want you to know in interviews and so on and so forth, and almost demonstrate what you could do to enhance that company's culture or their profits or whatever it might be. And then at the end, summarize your intent and thank them for considering your application. So it's kind of 4 really simple steps that you can take in a cover letter. They're there really to provide the recruiter more information about your suitability, and it's a way of explaining part of your CV that might not be so clear when you just look at that. And then finally, just kind of further resources for you. So we've got some further information on our FlightPad website. So go.flightpad.co.uk, get selected. I've got some additional webinars on there around how to prepare for selection activities, as well as CV and cover letter writing in more detail. And then I would just recommend the CV template you choose is completely up to you. Here's just a couple of simple suggestions to get you started. So go take a look. There's also beautiful looking CVs on Canva that you can utilize to get started. There's no need to recreate the magic. Just choose a CV template that works for you, and just make sure that it's substance over style. Often nowadays there are beautiful CV templates that then don't actually tell you very much about the candidate. So I would definitely not advise you to do that, but make sure that whatever you choose it works for you and enables you to tell your story to the recruiter. So that's everything from me on that, Ian. Did you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Comments?
We have a Q&A session starting
Brilliant.
very shortly, which I believe you're participating in.
I am.
With a bit of luck. I was just gonna say that was absolutely fantastic advice for people. There were I joked earlier with you that I haven't written a CV for many years, and that's true, fortunately. But I have read quite a few recently, and I have to say, I had a CV not too long ago from someone who was applying as a job as a proofreader, which had typos in it, and that was kind of like an instant dismissal. It may be a little I don't know, maybe I shouldn't admit to this, I don't know, but when someone applies for a job, I do take a quick look at their social media channel and take a judgment on that. So beware what you put on your social media channel. And that point you made about researching the company and tailoring your CV is so important. When you get a CV that's clearly been blasted out to 1,000 people that week and it's got details that are incorrect, then that just goes straight in the bin as well. So some really fantastic advice from you there. So people, if people could follow that would be so much better for everyone. So thank you very much, Tiina. I believe we're going to go to a short ad break, allow for a little bit of seat shuffling here, and then we'll see you again in a few minutes for the Q&A. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.